Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, as you all know by now, I am fascinated by how we have gone from this reactive approach to healthcare, where we wait for something to go wrong and then go to a doctor and say, "Doctor, I don't feel very well. What could it be?" And then you have weeks of troubleshooting to try and determine what the cause is of your ill health at that moment in time. And we seem to have shifted from that to a proactive approach, where now we've probably gone overboard recording everything from calories, steps, sleep, heart rate, blood pressure, and so much more. We monitor our health now, so we've got that hard data should anything change. But a company called HGS AxisPoint Health is a technology-enabled care management service that's focused on applying whole-person interventions to actually improve healthcare outcomes and reduce costs, etc. So I've invited both Michele Kratz and SV Krishnan onto the podcast today to discuss how health plans and providers are beginning to use a predictive analytics model known as impactability. And it's hoped that that will effectively address the multifaceted aspects of an individual's health. So we've got a lot to talk about today and learn more about the role of technology in all this. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to the US, where Michele and Krishnan is waiting to speak with us now. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Neil, thanks so much for having us. My name is Michele Kratz, and I lead operations for AxisPoint Health. We are our US-based company that provides care management and care coordination services to many different payers or managed care organizations throughout the United States. Krishnan leads data analytics for us, so it's ideal for him to be here with me today to talk to you about what we do at AxisPoint Health. I'm an RM by background, and I've been in the care management space for managed care payers since the late 90s. I lead operations, like I said, for AxisPoint Health. Our parent company is HGS. My scope of oversight is clinical operations, which is really that clinical care management team. We call them advocates on our team. I oversee account management, and I also manage our existing clinical programs or our products across all of our clients.
Thanks, Michele. Good morning and good afternoon, Neil. I recognize it's 4 p.m. there. My name is SV Krishnan, and I head healthcare analytics for HGS Healthcare. My responsibilities at HGS mainly lie in leveraging data to transform and build efficiencies across various healthcare dimensions that include both care management and administrative processes. Examples here include leveraging analytics to identify and target members in our population health management program that drive highest impact, or deploy algorithms to automate prior authorization where a provider requests approval for a procedure within health administration. The common theme in all instances is that I direct a team of data scientists that leverage data sources, develop predictive models, or work with clinical evidence that drive models or rules. But then, of course, these insights from these predictive models then flow into the healthcare operations that we support, the operations that Michele just alluded to.
Well, a big warm welcome to you both. And before we dive in a little bit deeper about what you're both working towards here and your mission, etc., and the technology, something I always try and do is have a bit of fun with the guests and talk about your origin story. I've chatted with nearly 2,000 people now, and most of those leaders in tech didn't begin their life in tech, but somewhere in their history, there was a spark and a passion for technology. And I'm kind of curious where that came from in you and what it was that put you on this path that you're on today. And Michele, I'll ask you first.
Yeah, sure. For me, I'd have to say it started for me, that spark happened when I was at a company called Elder Plan, which was in the late 90s, early 2000s. And for those of you who don't know what Elder Plan is, and you probably don't, it's a managed care company for Medicare and Medicare, Medicaid, or duals in the New York City area. It was called what they used to call a social HMO, which looked at the social drivers of these very medically complex and socially complex, and also complex from an emotional behavioral health perspective, really keeping them well and in the community for as long as possible to ultimately reduce the likelihood of institutionalization or being put into long-term care. So at that time, we were part of this social HMO consortium with the other plans throughout the US, Kaiser being one of them. And we were really trying to get in front of our emerging risk. And how we did it at that time was using only claims, Neil. So as you can imagine, our view was quite limited. Again, given that it was the late 90s, early 2000s, we just didn't have access to things that really honed in on emotional well-being and social factors driving health. So I'd say that really sparked it for me. I think also at that time, I had my first exposure to telemedicine. It was in the early 2000s when I was at Elder Plan, and we partnered with a company called Health Buddy, which I think may have been one of the first telemedicine devices out there. And for me, as a nurse in care management, it was incredibly exciting to have the ability for the member to tell us real time what was going on with them in relationship to their congestive heart failure, what they weighed that morning, did it increase or decrease, and for diabetes, what their blood sugar was. And also we could hone in on those members who didn't weigh themselves and didn't check their blood sugar. So it really opened my eyes to how technology really is an enabler to care management and my clinical team at that time.
What a great story. I love that. And Krishnan, if we go with the Marvel type question with you, what was your origin story? Can you remember what lit that spark in you?
Yes, actually, it is a collection of many small little things that have transpired over the last 20 years, if you will. As you know, most of us are familiar with the term big data. Healthcare is actually where the explosion of data is happening. While folks may say it's the financial industry or the manufacturing industry, the sheer volume, speed, and variety in healthcare is actually unmatched. Early on, it was the explosion of administrative data, the claims data based on what the provider submits after seeing his or her patient. And now, with the pervasive use of electronic medical records, there is an abundance of clinical data that speaks directly about the member's health conditions. Then we factor in the explosion in self-reported data that's obtained through questionnaires or surveys. And in the last 5 years, the explosion of data that we have seen being collected from medical devices, along with we all recognize that social determinants of health is a very interesting data resource or source, if you will, that can profile an individual. We are all together collecting all these sets of data, if you will, over 2,300 exabytes of healthcare data today. It's mind-boggling, and as we start looking at these numbers, this vast amount of both structured and unstructured data, to a data scientist or an engineer like me, is nirvana when it comes to tackling healthcare challenges or delivering quality care at a lower cost while delivering a great member experience. It's the classic triple aim of healthcare. So this nexus of data analytics and the ability to solve healthcare challenges actually drives my passion. It's been ongoing over the last 20 years with the onset of adoption of increasing administrative data, but increasingly with medical devices and social determinants of health. It's a fascinating time to be in healthcare where we can leverage technology.
And that path that you both took eventually led you to HGS AxisPoint Health, which is a technology-enabled care management service, but there will be people listening and hearing about it for the first time, and they'll be listening all over the world. So for those people, can you tell me a little bit more about the kind of problems that you're solving with technology?
Sure. As we know, HGS AxisPoint Health is a technology-enabled care management services company focused on applying whole person interventions to improve healthcare outcomes, reducing costs, and increasing member satisfaction. As I'd mentioned before, we leverage data analytics to target high impact members, and we'll be talking a little bit more about high impact members because that's an important core element of our operations in our care management services. The entire workflow from analytics to targeting to engagement to conducting one-on-one health risk assessments to interventions and follow-ups, they're all driven through our technology platform Axis. And to carry it forward, an extension of our population health management services here is addressing the aging population by identifying those that are frail, again through multiple data sets and multiple algorithms, and then tailoring a program to reverse it, all based on technology and the platforms that we possess. And then we integrate various data sets that includes that being obtained from medical devices as well, so that we can drive a robust aging in place operations as well. So apart from technology supporting these core operations that I talked about, all the various reporting metrics, if you will, right from operational metrics to clinical metrics to financial, they're all enabled through data analytics and our technology platform. So these are all some of the core offerings that we offer through HGS AxisPoint Health. Just a tad reference to some of our services outside of care management services. We use data analytics in improving various administrative processes as well, ranging from provider data management to prior authorization to risk management, etc. And everywhere we do leverage algorithms, conversion of paper to more electronic formats, NLP, all the way to speech analytics that drives appeals and grievances. So it's a whole slew of operations that we support within healthcare driven through technology.
Well, one of the things I always say on this podcast is technology works best when it brings people together. And one of the things that stood out for me when I was doing a bit of a research about you guys is how you're leveraging technology to help people. And that can be anything from identifying root causes of non-compliance with care plans and understanding social and behavioural health factors. But can you tell me a little bit more about how you do this?
This is actually a very important point that you bring about, Neil. Leveraging technology to help people is central to AxisPoint Health Population Health Management Program. As I'd remarked briefly before, I touched upon the word impact. The impactability index actually drives our targeting. This is the ability to identify modifiable parameters, whether it's modifiable hospitalization, modifiable attitude towards care, and modifiable social determinants of health. But with respect to targeting those with potential modifiable hospitalization, we look to clinical severity, where behavioral health compounds existing health risks. Example, those with depression and diabetes are more likely to be hospitalized. Along with, we take into account modifiable attitude towards care, such as gaps associated with medication or any other care protocol that impacts the particular modifiable factors. And finally, not the least, many in the population that we manage also have significant modifiable social determinants of health. What I mean by that is those that have a poor awareness of their situation or perhaps lack of transportation. These are the barriers that we typically help overcome. So within social determinants of health, we at AxisPoint have actually developed a proprietary 3-step deprivation index, starting with a census tract level population to block group to an individual level. So this deep root cause analysis of non-compliance, understanding of social and behavioral health factors, they all enable APH to target the impactable and help the members we serve, whether it is help with affording their medications or transportation or to seeing the doctor.
Yeah, thanks, Krishnan. And as Krishnan shared, our impactability model really helps our clinical team understand and hone in on those members or individuals who are likely to respond to our interventions, making our care management strategies much more effective than without this impactability and prioritization. I think also our model, our tenets of whole person care And Neil, I don't know how it is in your neck of the woods, but in mine, whole person care is that buzzword regarding how you holistically consider health through looking at not just physical health, but behavioral or emotional and social, and how you engage the member in that space. And for us, we simply don't put our agenda first. With our first meeting of our member, we ask them what we call the one question. And the one question is essentially asking that member, if you could change anything about your health, what would it be? And what that member tells us, we honor it, and we work on a goal that is attainable with them to achieve their one question answer. We believe that this is absolutely critical to creating that space of engagement and to begin establishing trust with the very first meeting. Trust is the key to understanding the member's why. And the member's why is their beliefs, as Krishnan mentioned, and reasons for not adhering to the care plan. Noncompliance, Neil, is not a word that we use because it implies that the member deliberately refused to follow the care plan or the plan of care. Instead, we use non-adherence, which indicates that a member is unintentionally not following the plan. And that unintentionally not following the plan is often tied to their belief system or a belief that they have about themselves. It's often lack of confidence, a belief that I can't. And frankly, the healthcare system is very complex and it's overwhelming. It's particularly overwhelming for the population who has significant social determinants of health and frankly, serious health inequity and serious access to healthcare. And that's really the Medicaid, Medicare population that we often work with. So by establishing that trust with the member, with both the intent of that one question and our qualifications of our clinical team, we are much more likely to have that engagement and that trust to really establish those early wins along with the member. The early win is critical because it helps build confidence that, hey, I can do this, and therefore momentum to ultimately improving health.
And one of the reasons I invited you on the podcast was how you're using technology to help people. And yes, this is a tech podcast. And just to bring to life how you're doing that, can you tell me a bit more about the technology right at the heart of everything that you're doing here?
Yeah, sure. I'll start with what's really emerging and exciting for us. I would say it's that multimodal approach that we're using to find and engage our membership. Two areas that have just exploded for us is texting as well as virtual visits. Texting prior to COVID really was welcomed and preferred by our younger populations. As COVID has hit us, we are seeing it expand and expanding to the older population, those Medicare folks and those people over 65 who are much more likely to respond to a text, as well as using our member portal to share information with us, like completing a health screening assessment. Virtual visits is a big deal for us. We have teams that are on the street, feet on the street, as we say, who engage with specific members who are impactable by face-to-face visits. As a result of COVID, we've really had to leverage telemedicine or virtual visits. We use a platform that's very easy for our members to upload on their smartphones or a computer. What we've seen and really learned about use of technology and use of smartphones is that more people have them and don't have them. It's been surprising to us, our ability to really use smartphone and phone technology for texting and virtual visits. And of course, our platform, and Krishnan said it much better than I did a little bit ago, that Axis really does it all, from ingesting data, creating target lists that my clinical team can run with, having that focus and knowing what is impactable, and ultimately allow us to hit the ground running.
And Krishna, correct me if I'm wrong, but despite being a tech company, and that's what you're known for, you are very much about that human touch. Is that right?
That's exactly right. So, from an analytics viewpoint, we have noticed that social determinants of health actually they play a key part in ensuring adherence to our programs and reducing overall costs. So yes, we are a technology company. Yes, we leverage texting, telehealth, smartphone, etc. But the very example that Michele talked about, the first question that we ask is what's the central issue to our member? And regaining that trust from that member becomes central to it. Thereafter, how we approach that problem also works around the members' issues. For example, if it is social determinants of health, whether it's transportation, whether it's the affordability issue, they're all the human touch becomes central to our care management program. The trust, the ability to influence, the ability to modify, the whole impact, if you will. These are all the engagement side, which makes it very different outside of the technology that we kept hearing about. Yes, we can, through technology, enable a very neat workflow, but till the time we truly understand what's driving that person's behavior, what's driving that person's visit to the emergency department, what's driving that person's non-adherence to medication, what's the central thing that really truly is impacting that individual, we won't be able to make what you call the proverbial bending the curve. And that's where a whole segment of our operations is focusing on the human touch.
Yeah, and just to add to that, our clinical team really makes our data analytics smarter. The information that our clinical team gathers based on what the member tells us and how we respond from an intervention perspective goes right back into our data analytics to refine our data analytics and make our data analytics smarter.
So I'm curious, do you think health plans and providers are beginning to use a predictive analytics model known as impactability to address the multifaceted aspects of an individual's health that we're talking about here? Is that something that you're seeing more and more?
This is a very important point that differentiates AxisPoint Health from others. Identifying impactable members is at the core of AxisPoint Health care management. At AxisPoint Health, we define impactability as the ability to modify the utilization of an individual through a care management program. Certainly there are the programs themselves modifying utilization, but we're talking about how do we modify the utilization of an individual in a care management program. Our impactability index cuts across clinical severity, utilization behaviors. We talked about some of the non-adherence, and social determinants of health to target those not only at high risk for avoidable hospitalization, but also combining it with ability to modify the risk. Because yes, we can identify the individual, but once we identify, we should be also able to modify the risk of hospitalization. Now, what's happening in the space today is that many health plans, they use algorithms that deploy conventional models that predict cost to then target top utilizers. You would have heard, typically when you do your research, you would have heard of the top 5% in Medicaid population, for example, consuming nearly 50% of all resources. That doesn't mean we have to target this 5%. While, this kind of an analysis is a reasonable actuarial approach, top utilizers need not necessarily be those whose risk can be altered. Example, those with, say, rheumatoid arthritis or Crohn's disease will continue costing heavily as many may be on Humira. Some other health plans look to predict and target avoidable hospitalizations, which I believe is a step in the right direction. But they may not include care behavior patterns that are modifiable, that I just talked about. So at AxisPoint Health, we deploy a multifaceted approach to not only identify those at very high risk for hospitalization, but add the non-adherence aspect with care protocol to truly identify the highly impactable. And then when we layer in our proprietary social determinants of health indices to identify and target the most impactable, we truly are working on modifiable risk. So when we started looking at what's happening in the industry today, For example, we compared our analysis to a leading predictor of avoidable hospitalizations. Our targeting showed an impact 3 to 6 times higher than this leading provider of quote unquote impact-based analysis. So it's a lot happening in the industry today, but I believe that aligning not only avoidable utilization, but aligning it with non-compliance and non-adherence, if you will, along with social determinants of health, putting the whole ingredients together makes our offering a lot more robust.
And we are at that time of the year where we're starting to look at the trends and what excites us about life in 2022. So I'm going to ask this to both of you. And Michele, I'll ask you first. What excites you about the future of a more proactive healthcare rather than that reactive system from the past?
I'm excited by the result of COVID and the use of technology and the acceptance of technology by our membership is super exciting. I'm also jazzed about a clinician's ability to sharpen their focus by understanding emerging risk, the drivers of emerging risk, and how to focus on what really matters to make them ultimately more efficient and effective in caring for their patients.
Love that. And Krishnan, is there anything in particular that excites you about the future of proactive healthcare?
What Michele said is spot on. In addition, to me, proactive healthcare differs from reactive in the sense that action is taken before symptoms manifest. And today, most of healthcare is focused on post the fact. To address this, analytics and population health management programs must be trained towards identification and interventions in such individuals prior to symptom manifestation. While many of us are invested in preventing hospitalizations or readmissions, which is a good step towards proactive healthcare, I would more look at how can I prevent many such conditions such as cancers, strokes, diabetes, or even hypertension, where we should also be focusing. The issue here is that data is limited. Many of us focus on claims data, but without specific data sources and predictive model, we won't be able to target the right people so that we can truly be in the proactive healthcare space. But at AxisPoint Health, we do have the algorithms and the ability to deliver proactive healthcare, leveraging the right sets of data sets and be truly proactive here so that we can not just look at focus on preventing hospitalizations, but truly start preventing diabetes, start preventing hypertension, start preventing cancers, and do that by not boiling the ocean, by having a very targeted list as well.
And what about yourselves at AxisPoint? What's going to be your big focus next year?
Great question, Neil. We'll continue to help the managed care organizations, the insurance companies that we work with to grow closer to their members while we help them run their business. We listen to what their pain points are. There's no secret here that the population is aging, and more of the population is growing aging into Medicare. And many of them will be what we call dual eligible, Medicare and Medicaid, which are the frailest and most complex. So we expect to grow in this area, working with those plans who serve these populations. And of course, continue to grow our data analytics platform. I think Krishnan did a really nice job of conveying that it's both an art and a science.
Well, we started the podcast today with a little bit of fun, talking about your origin story, and we're going to finish with a little bit of fun now. I'm going to ask you both to share the soundtrack to your origin story. If there's a particular song or piece of music that has inspired you along the way, or just helps you get your head in the zone before going into a big meeting or going on stage. And as you're from the town of brotherly love there in Philly, I'm going to go with you, Michele, first. A lot of pressure on you here if you're going to go with a Philly sound or not. But what song are you going to choose for our Spotify playlist?
Well, surprisingly, I'm not, Neil. This was an easy question for me to answer because I go right back to those early 2000s that I spoke about in, understanding what sparked me. And it was a U2 concert. It was right after 9/11 at Madison Square Gardens in New York City. And they opened their show before they came on with the Stevie Wonder song, Higher Ground. That song jazzes me. It's got this tenacity and perseverance to it and energy that certainly jazzes me. So that's my answer.
Wow, what a great song there, and a great choice, a great story behind that as well. And pressure's on you now, Krishnan. Is there a song you can share with us?
So I was just talking about some of these aspects that you don't ask these things to a data engineer. Yeah. So yes, it's a very interesting question to me. But as Michele said, data science and real world, unlike the word science, is part art as well. And it is this art, it is this ability to be creative, to dream up algorithms, mixing models within the limitations of real life. That is what has inspired me. It's easy for a data scientist to say, A plus B equal to 3 or 4, but in real life, it doesn't work that way. So it's a creative aspect behind it. In fact, which has led to our developing of our proprietary social deprivation indices, to developing our impactability approach. So no example of a song per se, but it's the creative elements of it. If that's what drives me.
Love that. And for everybody listening anywhere in the world, if they want to find out more information about any of the topics we've covered today, there are so many different domain names out there now. What's the best way of finding you guys online and contacting your team if they've got any questions?
Our website address, Neil, is www.hgshealthcare.com. Both Krishnan and I can be found on LinkedIn, and we'd love to talk more about this.
Yeah, we're thrilled. We're very excited about the impactability approach and the whole person approach that we have adopted at AxisPoint. And with anyone with more questions, they can also contact me directly at sv.krishnan@hgshealthcare.com.
Well, I love how you're using technology to help people, and especially going from that reactive approach to healthcare to proactive, and also the predictive analytics model, the impactability that you mentioned there, not to mention also identifying root causes of non-compliance with care plans and understanding those social and behavioural health factors in addition to physical health to achieve that bigger impact on the population's health. It's fantastic. But more than anything, I think it was just washed out with two fantastic stories and one song. I'm going to get another song out of you at some point in the future, Krishnan. But thank you for sharing your stories with me today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
What a great team Michele and Krishnan are. And impactability that more effectively addresses those multifaceted aspects of an individual's health is fascinating, because it includes identifying root causes of non-compliance with care plans and understanding social and behavioural health factors in addition to physical health in order to achieve a bigger impact on population health. Fascinating stuff, but if you work in the world of healthcare or you're a patient that's interested in this kind of technology, or you've got any opinions on it, please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn at Neil C. Hughes, and my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. So keep your messages coming in. I'll be back bright and early tomorrow, hanging around in your podcast feed, waiting for you to hit download. So until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.